Something really beautiful happens in Paul's letters in our New Testament. Two different groups of people are being brought together, Jews and Gentiles. And you know how hard it can be across racial, ethnic, cultural lines for us to come together. It happens in our Bible. It happens because of Paul's experience of the Christ. Did you see in the reading today, the Christ himself breaks down the dividing walls of hostility between people. Now, the Jews had always been taught to treat Gentiles kindly. That was always the ethic, to have hospitality for the stranger. But you know, in the everyday and the real day, when people are different, acrimony can develop, or some sense of the other, some sense of superiority. So the Jews had some racial slurs for Gentiles, like called them dogs, and the Gentiles, I'm sure, had slurs about the Jews. But the Christ is this energy of love and hope that can bring people together. Well, you know how divisive our world can be these days and how polarized. We also need to be brought together. And that might be the very key to democracy itself. Okay, follow me. So these days, both parties are claiming the other party is going to destroy democracy. If you're on the far left, you think that it's authoritarianism or fascism that will crumble what we know as democracy. If you're on the right, you think it's communism or socialism. Both sides are speaking the same language, that democracy is in peril. I don't really know if our democracy is in peril, and I trust a strong embedded democracy in our states and local municipalities and such. I don't know if it's a catastrophe, but I think we can all sense our democracy is feeling strained, because the key to democracy, of course, is some sense of unity as a nation. It's obvious that in some basic way, solidarity or a sense of togetherness in a common purpose would be that ground floor that produces democracy. But it is worrisome today. We're feeling more polarized. We burrow down in our social media bubbles. We don't connect as much. So let's go back to basics. And the Christ would hope for this. Let's go back to basics. Relationships and solidarity. Whether you think democracy is in peril or not, in our communities we need to be strengthening our sense of relationship and being unified with one another. So often we're emphasizing how we're different than one another. So there are two basic ways human beings relate to each other in any local community, either through bonding activities or bridging activities. Bonding activities are where you hang out with people like you. Most of us do bonding activities a lot. We hang out with people that are like us, we relate with people that are like us, and bonding is good. That also creates a sense of unity. But for real solidarity to be taking hold across a spectrum, there has to be bridging activities too, where you relate to someone different than yourself. Oh, you should take a little inventory right now. How often are you engaged in a bridging activity where you're around people from a very different socioeconomic status or different cultural place? Or think about it in your life. When are you having bridging activities? Do you know, I think that's one of the most beautiful aspects of church. Church can be a bridging activity. Now, to be sure, you go to a church like First-Plymouth and you'll meet a lot of people like you. So there's bonding activity here, but there's always some bridging activity where there's people from different perspectives and different races, and that bridging activity is what builds us up. Right now, something really cool has happened where we're partnering with a bilingual preschool that looks to me like a perfect bridging activity. People with different ethnicities and languages and people of different socioeconomic status can come together around our children right here at First-Plymouth. But that happens a lot of ways as well. Bridging activities is why American churches matter a lot, that people of a different mind can come together. Like First-Plymouth, it's super purple. It's a purple church. meaning we have a lot of people from both major parties. And that's our genius, I think, where we can have bridging conversations across that divide. We create a solidarity, and that strengthens our democracy. So I've been reading a book that even gets a little more complex about our democracy. That there's a storyline that's happened. You may not have been paying attention to this. James Davison Hunter, great cultural analyst, has written a book called Democracy and Solidarity. And he believes that the American democracy was founded on what he calls a hybrid enlightenment, meaning our founding fathers, and we're coming from an enlightenment perspective that individual reason is what, and being rational and developing rational institutions that are properly ordered. Enlightenment principles were a key to our democracy, but it was hybrid. Religious sensitivities matter. I'm not saying we were formed as a Christian nation, but the religious ideal of the moral vision. What is a common good? What does it take for a human being to flourish? Somehow in America, we mixed that religious insight of what is life worth living for? What makes for a good human life? What's moral with Enlightenment principles, and that held it together. But he claims now both sides of that hybrid, that union, have eroded. We no longer trust the rational. We talk about truth as being relative. And we no longer trust that we have a sense of what's moral or what's a vision, a common vision for the human being. We've lost the sense of that religious impulse. Now again, I'm not talking about going back to a Christian nationalism where we think Christianity and our government is merged, but there has to be a spirituality at play where we can unite around a moral vision. What is good? What is right? Both of those have eroded. And he thinks that is where democracy is struggling, where it is lost its energy. It's depleted. So my friends, it would not surprise you to now hear a minister say, if you're worried about our democracy, we need to reclaim deep spiritual values as well. What is good? What is right? What are we striving for with common purpose? A number of commentators and scholars have claimed that there's almost a metaphysical crisis at play in America, that we've trusted that economic progress and technological progress will make human beings happy. And it can to some degree, but we're finding that just economic progress, just technological progress, that more and more human beings feel lonely or depressed or anxious. That human beings are in a metaphysical crisis right now. What's their purpose in life? Well, again, back to church. We come together around a moral vision. That the human being fully alive, that's God's joy. The human being living with fairness and justice with others. We have a clear moral vision. And we begin to rebuild back that sense of deep solidarity. Well, my friends, as the election season heats up, you'll hear a lot more catastrophizing or catastrophizing of making everything to be this disaster that's underway. I don't think there's a disaster underway. But whoever wins any of these elections, we need to come together, work for a common vision of the good and the true. May God bless you.